Hi everyone. I'm sure everybody's tired at this stage, but we're going to do something I think a little bit different. 13 years ago, I invented a sport. And it's one of those moments, I love chatting to people. I'm from Ireland, and when I get into taxis, I love chatting to the taxi driver. And when they ask, what do you do? And then I say, I invented a sport. It's kind of a conversation stopper because they kind of look around and go, what do you mean? How is that possible? So 13 years ago, I'm an entrepreneur of 27 years, but 13 years ago, to create a hobby for myself, I started a project I called Kouture. And the idea was that teenagers between the ages of 13 and 18 would create high-end wearable fashion from trash. And then they would compete in events. And at that stage, we're looking back now 13 years, there was one event, the first event we ever had, was 400 people turned up to a hotel room and 60 kids took to stage in costumes that they designed. And over the next 8 or 9 years in Ireland, that grew to start filling stadiums, and I'm going to show you a video later on, to start filling stadiums. So over 9 years, Kouture became the fastest growing sport in Ireland, even though nobody could see it as a sport. Because I used to get up and say to people, why was there never a sport for creative people? Because when I was a kid, I was terrible at sport. I was that kid last pick for every football team. And what did that entail? Well, that entailed a lot of peer-to-peer rejection every day. But what I saw as a teenager was that all cool came from sports. If you played sports at school, things just seemed to be so easy. As a creative kid, I spent most of my time in the corner of the classroom. I would have been making things, painting, sculpting, writing. I did a lot of writing, but I was never cool. And so I wondered, would it be possible to create something for kids that would be that cool? So fast forward 13 years, and Kouture is now in 35 countries, and 100,000 kids have participated in creating high-end fashion from trash. And to give you an idea just what it looks like before I tell you any more, I've got a video that's 90 seconds long that shows you what our events look like. It's about empowering young people. It's about letting them come out and express themselves and be appreciated for being creative.
Obviously, everyone's using unconventional materials in their works.
So many of our young people are so involved in climate change and trying to make a difference.
Got all these creative kids and they're searching for a platform that is similar to what football or swimming or athletics gives them. And all of a sudden, Kouture just fills that gap.
You'd look at things at a better perspective now since you've taken part in Kouture.
We've always been amazed by it, and we always want to. This is a dream come true for us to be here right now.
Express our talents and to show what we can do, and no holding back.
We are that creative, that sport for creative kids. That's what we are, and that fits everywhere. So to give you an idea of some of the stuff that I have learned about myself and about these 100,000 kids, because they're incredible, over the last 13 years. So what I said earlier on, this started in 2010, but until 2019, I never knew what it was about. I had other companies and people used to say to me, is this a hobby? Is it a bit of fun that you do? And in 2019, we'd won a lot of awards for a live event. On the surface of this was fantastic. But underneath it, it was terrible. I had never scaled a company of that size before. I didn't know how to manage people. And I didn't even know who I really was. So in 2019, I fired the whole team. I fired the customers, the suppliers, everybody, and I decided to start again. And as part of that process, I applied to do this master's degree at MIT. And And I remember going to that very apprehensive. I sat in the back of the room at the start. There was 68 global entrepreneurs. They all seemed to be super confident. They had so much going for them. They were doing all kinds of revenues. And I just sat there and said, I don't fit. And I remember the facilitator of that course brought out a box of Kleenex and explained that we were going to need it that night because people were going to cry. And I didn't know why people were going to cry. I thought, we're on a business course, what are we going to cry about? But when it was my turn that night, he come to chat to me and he said, so on this application, you have multiple companies, but Kouture is the one you're talking about all the time. Why is that? And I answered that question with, well, I love working with kids. I love the creativity. I love the fashion. And he just said, but why? I love working with kids. I love the creativity. I love the fashion. And he just kept saying, but why to me? And after, I can't remember how many, but after 8 or 9 whys, I was ready to punch the guy. I was like, I have told you the effing answer. What more do you want me to say? And then I just started to cry. The tears just came running down my face. And the words that came out of my mouth were not what I expected. And I just said, every one of those kids are me. And in that moment, I realized that this was much more than money or creating a company. This was personal to me. And so what were those kids? Those kids were on the outside. They were misunderstood. They were told in school, you need to do maths, you need to do science. What did they hear? They heard that their skills were shit because they wanted to create things. They didn't want to do maths and science. That's what happened to me. I did accountancy because the teacher said there's no money in art. So that in some way changed my trajectory. So I left that course that year and said, right, there's kids in every classroom in the world that are misunderstood. How do I bring this to every classroom in the world? And that started a journey for me from 2019 to now. And I want to tell you about some of the kids I've met along the way. So this guy is called Maxim O'Sullivan. He knitted this from VHS. I need the older people will know what VHS is, right? It took a year to knit, and it was a homage to the movie industry. So around the back of his head is 35mm film. Maxim is a young LGBT guy from Ireland, and when you hear his story, it was very much the same as mine. He was on the outside. As part of creating this design, he got to go to the Cannes Film Festival. He was at a number of movie premieres and different events around the cinema. And he was interviewed a year later, and the interviewer was saying to him, the Cannes Film Festival, like that's huge. That most adults will never get to go to that. Or you're a movie premiere with Prince Charles. But what was the biggest one of those things? What was the biggest thing for you? She said to him, and this stage he's 17 years old. And he paused for a second, and he said, the biggest thing for me was I found my personality. And what I realized in that moment was, it wasn't that he found his personality, because it was always there. It was that other people started to see it. And other people started to value what he was and who he was as a person. And that's why I come to this realization that runs through Kouture now, and what this whole keynote's about is the power of being seen for who you are. And that's just not relevant to kids, because there's so many adults that were told when they were teenagers, you will never be that thing that you loved, and they stopped doing it. And you know, one of the things I send people to YouTube to search this video that Robbie Williams made. A guy that's 40 years old, made hundreds of millions in money and records and his fame all over the world. And a number of years ago, he wrote a poem and put it to music online. And it was an ode to a teacher that he had when he was 15 years old, who said, you're never going to be anything dancing around a classroom like that. And it was hard to believe that fast forward 25 years after all he'd achieved, the teacher was still sitting on his shoulder saying to him, you're never going to be anything. And it was so enlightening to me to realize that there's people out there that are carrying around one line that has affected their whole life. And so at Kouture, we have created this mission to enrich and empower the lives of 1 billion young people through what we do. And the goal is to have young people be seen for who they really are. So what happens is there's a whole process that they go through. They have to create a theme. So his theme was the cinema. a homage to the cinema. His parents were involved in it. They picked their own music, so his music was Live and Let Die, the theme from the Bond movie. And they get 1 minute on stage at some of those shows that you do, and now there's multiple layers, because now we have a world final, we have a World Cup for creative kids, which took place in Monaco just a month ago. And through that process, they learn resiliency, they learn how to overcome challenges, they learn that their skills are valued, and I see them grow up and become completely different people. Another person I want to just touch on is this young lady called Rachel Irwin. So the first time I met Rachel was in the green room of a television studio, and when I walked in, she was the first person sitting there. Her dad was up against the wall standing, and her mum was beavering around. Her mum's full of energy. And I said to her, God, tell me about this dress, not knowing what she was going to tell me. So she said to me, a year ago, my brother was 16, and he dropped dead at school suddenly. His heart just stopped. And I went, oh. And then she says, my dad doesn't speak anymore. And I went into a lot of anger and at the school, at life, about what happened to our John. And she said then, the teachers didn't know what to do with me. I was stuck in no man's class every day. I was just in this random class. And so I started this project to come into the school junkature. And so she said, I decided to make this dress from everything that my brother owned or played with. So the skirt of this is a trampoline, an old trampoline. You can see the binding things around the bottom, which was his favorite toy. And then the feathers are from, his favorite bird was a robin. So she made the shape of a robin, because whenever robins used to appear around the farm, her mom would say, our John is with us. I stood and cried as she told me all the little bits, how it didn't work, how she had to change it, how she made this incredible design as a homage to her brother. And now I was using that to talk about what happened to him, about sustainability, how we have to reuse things, and just an incredible young woman with an incredible message that she was taking around the world. So that is 2 of 100,000 kids. And I think one of the reasons that I come here today was to find like-minded people. There's a lot of people in this world who can change things for not me, but for kids out there. Connections into schools, connections into other young people. I met these young men at the front earlier on. I'm sure the rest of you have too, right? And it's this, and it's a story similar to that, but there's a young woman she's 16 years old, from Pakistan. And these guys, it's the same kind of thing. She spoke at an event for us, and when she was introduced as the voice of the future. This young woman's Maha, she's from Pakistan. I want you to listen to her. She's the voice of the future. This was the guy introducing her. And when she got on stage, the first thing she said was, you're very mistaken. This is the mistake that adults make. We are not the voice of the future. We are the voice of the present. And wouldn't it be great if adults actually listened to some of the ideas we've got? We mightn't have the resources, but we've got great ideas. You guys have the resources. And if we could marry those two things together, what a change we would make. And I remember standing there in awe of a 16-year-old going, I couldn't have answered the question the same way. But after that, and this is the way I see young people thinking, because when we left that event, there was 1,000 people at it. They were all staying at the same hotel. We all went back to the same hotel, and there was a queue out the door for the elevator. Now, all these people were consultants for a huge top 4 accounting firm. Very smart people, $10,000 a day if you want to hire them. Incredibly, incredibly intelligent. And we joined the end of the queue, and young Maha said to me, why are we in this queue? I said, we're waiting for the elevator like everybody else. But why are we waiting for the elevator? Because we have to. So she said, follow me. So we followed her. She went down the stairs 1 level and hit the elevator door. And of course, the next time the elevator came down, it passed the lobby and came to the bottom floor, and we get into an empty elevator, and when we went up and it opened, and I saw all those people out there that are getting paid $10,000 a day. It's like, it's young people have a fresh look on life because of they haven't been told that they can't do something. And the way I explain that to people is, when everybody's born, we're born with a can't switch in our heads. And as you grow older, the can't switch goes on more and more. What I mean by that is, if you're 5 years old, you do believe if you put a towel on your back, you can be Superman, because nobody says you can't be. Now, when you're 40 and 50, you know that's impossible. But a teenager between the ages of 13 and 18, they know they can't. Superman's not. But they have a completely different outlook on the way the world is. They see things without the blinkers sometimes that adults have. And that's one of the things that Junk Kouture has allowed me to be connected to. I get connected to that incredible energy every day. And I think that is something that we as a company can do, is connect brands with that energy. Over the last 3 years, I've been fortunate enough to work with three global leaders in their vertical, Microsoft, Deloitte, and DHL. And they have helped me bring this across the world. And why are they involved? Because Junk Kouture is around two pillars that I see as the future of all commerce and life: creativity and circularity. AI is going to do so much for us, but what are humans going to have left? The power to be creative. It's going to be the most valuable asset in the world. The one thing that humans can do that they will not be able to replace is to see something way out in that future and go after it. And if we don't change and become a circular society, well, we know where that's going to end up. So over the last 3 years, we have built this platform that encourages creativity in schools, in kids, changes young lives, and at the same time creates these circular engineers of the future, that they go out from this process with this kind of mindset. And to give you this one last story, because it's about a young girl who works for us now. We hired her because I met her when she was 16 years old, and her name was Katie. And it's the same thing about this can't switch. So Katie set out to make a dress out of orange peel, and that rotted. And it rotted again, and it rotted 4 times. And her father's there going, you know, that's not going to work. That you need to find something else. But the young mind doesn't see that. So it took her a few months. But over a 3 or 4 month period, Katie figured out a way to make leather out of oranges and made this incredible dress that still exists today, 12 years later. And she now heads up our communications, because she goes and talks to young people across the world about how this changed her life, how it empowered her as a young woman, how people started to see the skills that she had versus the ones that she didn't, how people started to recognize in her that she could be something more than the girl who didn't play hockey, because all her friends played hockey and she always felt on the outside. But that's the journey I've had with Junk Kouture. Thanks for listening to me. I'll be around later on, and some of my team are here. If anybody wants to chat about what we're doing, it'd be great to chat to everybody. Thank you for listening.